Good afternoon. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm Steve Kerrigan. I'm the Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor here in Massachusetts, joined by Representative Jeffrey Sanchez, who will speak to you in a few moments. We are here because over the last 2 weeks, the difference in this race for governor and lieutenant governor has become clearer and clearer. And it began when an outside group funded by national Republicans ran an attack ad against Martha Coakley, my running mate, and her stellar track record of protecting children and victims. Charlie Baker defended the ad, which frankly I think goes to a new low in this campaign. That defense really opened a window into Charlie, and that he would stand behind ads like that that used to attack someone who has spent her entire career protecting children. And Charlie said he's proud of his record protecting children as well, and his time as Secretary of HHS, which oversees DSS, which is now DCF, public health, mental health, welfare, and many other issues that he has suddenly found voice to criticize. But on each of these issues, Charlie is the one candidate who had an opportunity to make a difference and to lead, and he failed. Martha Coakley's been on the side of children, families, the vulnerable, and the voiceless her entire career. Martha stood up for the voiceless women of human trafficking. She stood up against Wall Street and the big banks to keep people in their homes. She's been standing up for workers at every end of the economic spectrum to make sure that we give them opportunities, not just the wealthy, but those all across Massachusetts who deserve access to early childhood education, who deserve earned sick time for all workers. The clear difference in this race is that Martha Coakley is on the side of people. She sees them, she hears them, and she will speak for them as our next governor. Charlie Baker has been fighting on behalf of the boardroom and trickle-down policies his entire career, and we're seeing nothing more than more of the same in this campaign. Charlie Baker sees data, Martha Coakley sees people. Where's Charlie been? We know where Martha Coakley's been on a lot of these issues. The question is, where's Charlie been? So we asked those questions, and it turns out Charlie Baker was right there in the State House. When he was there, he was proud of his record again as the State Secretary of HHS, which is quite astounding because when you really drill down on it, I don't see an awful lot to be proud of. But we've looked at that record, and particularly on his issues of protecting children and on welfare. And there's not a lot to be proud of, and we'll break that down for you. But I'll tell you, one of the first decision that Charlie Baker had in this campaign for governor was who he would serve with in that race, and he chose proudly someone who was an anti-equality, anti-immigrant, radical Republican legislator in Karen Polito. But let's talk about that record that Charlie is very, very proud of relative to protecting children. Because, when he was given a chance to lead on that, he failed. Charlie Baker knew he had a problem with DSS when he arrived as the secretary. A report landed on his desk 2 weeks after he took the job that said that the previous 2 years when he was undersecretary hadn't made a dent in the problems, and that we had record caseloads and there was an organizational breakdown, and that the number of kids who could face abuse or possibly even die would jump again unless drastic changes were made. Caseloads are spiraling out of control under Charlie Baker, forcing social workers to mount a legal challenge to try to force him into action. Instead, Charlie Baker hired 18 social workers and reverted $2 million back to the general fund, even with sky-high caseloads. Meanwhile, in just 9 months, Governor Deval Patrick has hired 420 social workers to deal with the crisis that we're dealing with at DCF today. 2 weeks into his tenure, Charlie hadn't moved the needle, and a legislative subcommittee highlighted what they called serious problems at DSS and noted that Baker's DSS had contracted with 500 private daycare centers and daycare providers across the Commonwealth, $286 million worth of contracts to these 500 private companies with no oversight or monitoring of those agencies at all. So when he was done, one expert called DSS more dysfunctional in that period than ever before, and chastised it and chastised its what they called relentless mediocrity. Charlie Baker might think that relentless mediocrity is something to be proud of and good enough when protecting our kids and our families, but I know we can do better. Charlie Baker's been talking a lot in this campaign about welfare reform. As a matter of fact, it's front and center in all of his ads and in most of his presentations. What he doesn't talk about is his record when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of HHS, Baker proposed a plan that would refer welfare parents to DSS to determine his record. As Secretary of when he had a chance to lead. Plan that would refer HHS, Baker proposed a welfare parents to DSS to determine permanently an EBT card. His record, police of whom, with legal plan that would refer when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of HHS, Baker proposed a process to determine permanently an EBT card. Police his record plan that would refer of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of HHS, Baker proposed permanently an EBT card process to determine police welfare parents to DS plan that would refer of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of his record permanently an EBT card process to determine police welfare parents to DS plan that would refer when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of his record permanently an EBT card process to determine police of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of his record plan that would refer process to determine permanently an EBT card of whom, with legal police. As Secretary of his record process to determine plan that would refer when he had a chance to lead. Welfare parents to DS police. As Secretary of whom, with legal process to determine plan that would refer his record when he had a chance to lead. As Secretary of police welfare parents to DS of whom, with legal plan that would refer his record process to determine as Secretary of police when he had a chance to lead. Welfare parents to DS permanently an EBT card of whom, with legal plan that would refer process to determine as Secretary of his record welfare parents to DS when he had a chance to lead. Permanently an EBT card of whom, with legal police. As Secretary of process to determine welfare parents to DS when he had a chance to lead. His record permanently an EBT card plan that would refer of whom, with legal HHS Baker proposed a as Secretary of welfare parents to DS when he had a chance to lead. Plan that would refer of whom, with legal permanently an EBT card. His record HHS Baker proposed a as Secretary of process to determine welfare parents to DS plan that would refer of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. His record permanently an EBT card process to determine as Secretary of welfare parents to DS plan that would refer of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. HHS Baker proposed a his record process to determine permanently an EBT card welfare parents to DS of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. Plan that would refer HHS Baker proposed his record process to determine permanently an EBT card welfare parents to DS of whom, with legal as Secretary of when he had a chance to lead. Plan that would refer HHS Baker proposed his record process to determine permanently an EBT card welfare parents to DS of whom, with legal as Secretary of when he had a chance to lead. Plan that would refer HHS Baker proposed his record process to determine permanently an EBT card welfare parents to DS of whom, with legal when he had a chance to lead. HHS Baker proposed a plan that would refer process to determine permanently an EBT card of whom, with legal welfare parents to DS his record as Secretary of HHS Baker proposed when he had a chance to lead. Permanently